right, let's review quiz number 5 about electricity and grounding. This is a teeny tiny little chapter if you're reading along in the book, but the last 2 chapters are going to have more than we can really cover, so it's a trade-off. Plus, you probably just finished last semester the audio electronics class, and this is kind of cherry-picked a little out of that audio electronics class. So the first question, often engineers overlook grounding and power conditioning. So these electricity issues, you as the engineer, you're going to be responsible for them, but nobody's really excited about them until they don't work right or they zap somebody. Speaking of which, improper grounding can allow your equipment to have 2 pathways to ground, right? So kind of how we talked, like the electricity could go through that outlet or that outlet. If it has 2 different ways that it can get there just as easily, that's where you start to have some problems. So ideally, that leads us to the next question. Ideally, all of your studio equipment should be on the same circuit. If you can get it on the same circuit, much better. If you do not, or if you do have a grounding problem, you get the 60 cycle hum, right? Well, that's the word that I would use for it, and I think that's the word in the quiz. So 60 cycle hum. And sort of a related question, all the cables that you're going to use, it's advisable, it's wise to keep them as short as possible, right? Here I'm being slightly hypocritical because I think this cable that I've got on this microphone, the microphone is less than a foot from the preamp, and I got about a 10-foot cable. But still, 10-foot cable is not as big a deal. If you had a 300-foot cable, yeah, you're going to start to have some of these hums and radio frequencies. But it's wise to keep your cables as short as you can. Now, if your traditional grounding doesn't seem to be working quite right, you might want to consider balanced power, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. It's basically just using transformers. Power conditioning, though. So why should we pay the money to have a Furman? Why did we plug all those things in through that overpriced power strip, right? Well, 3 main things. You got voltage regulation, interrupting or power interruptions, eliminating your power interruptions, and then to keep the lines quiet, to keep them from adding noise to our signal. So this is another all of the above type questions. Now, multi-phase power does mean that we're using multiple circuits, but this is, if you are using multi-phase power, you're going to want to make sure that you know which circuits are where, that you've got your lights on one circuit, your sound equipment on another circuit, and all your other electricity on the 3rd circuit. And then lastly, balanced power, it uses a transformer. So those are, again, that's another class that we kind of condensed into one lecture, into one little chapter. But I hope that was useful to you. And if it wasn't, like the kangaroo says, at these prices, I'm not surprised.